I love the tweet you guys put up too, and it was like, who was doing? That was you. You're like, this very thoughtful pose in the picture. Like, I'm thinking very. No. It's Alex is here. He sat here, but you're like off the side. But it was either incredibly candid and cool, or you were like, take the picture. Okay.
Oh, is that what we What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Gamers for the Win interview. My name is Alex Gibson, and I'm here today at Optimus Bristol, a Comic-Con event. And joining me here today is the one and only Mr. Troy Baker. Troy,
I'm so glad that it's one and only, because like one of the many Troy Baker. That would be an interesting way, right? One of the many Troy Bakers, but this one is the guy you might know from these things.
Indeed. So how are you going today, man? How are you enjoying the event?
It's incredible. It's been a whirlwind trip. We got in Thursday. I typically, when I come into London, I always give myself like a buffer day. And I didn't this time, so we went straight from Heathrow to the hotel to the BAFTAs. Wow. I showed up with about 15 minutes to spare before I had to be on stage. Wow. Everybody was at BAFTAs was just sweating themselves to death, but we made it. It was fun, and then we hopped on the train last night. We came out here, and it's been really cool. First year con, so obviously it's you're feeling the growing pains, sure. But I feel like it's cool to be a part of that because I feel like this is going to be a good show that's going to keep going on, and the fans are incredible, so it's been fun.
Sounds like a packed schedule.
Quite a bit, yeah. But it's good. It's good.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, you've played such a variety of different characters in your voice acting career. I mean, you've played bad guys like the Joker in the Batman series, Pagan Min in Far Cry 4, but then you've also played some iconic good guy characters as well, like Joel from The Last of Us.
Ooh, see, it could go either way in there, but that's the beauty of being offered roles like this, is that you can look at that and it becomes the conversation becomes the question: is Joel a good guy? I think that inherently Joel was a good guy. But again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the panel we just did, where there's few moral lines that man has left to cross.
That's right. Yeah.
So if you look at David, to me, what's so remarkable about The Last of Us, not to sideline us, but I think it's a really cool tangent, I don't think that there is a single bad guy in The Last of Us. I look at David, and clearly that's supposed to be the villain, but there's nothing that says that he's the villain. I mean, you could easily flip the tables and go, Joel is the villain. I mean, this is a guy that's going around rampaging, killing people. So David's just doing what he has to do to protect his people. How is it any different?
It's just a result of the chaos of that world.
Exactly.
But what I was driving at was, is that what appeals to you with voice acting, that you could play such a variety? I mean, it's not about how you look, it's about, you've got the opportunity to do so many different roles.
We were talking about this at the BAFTAs the other night. I said, what I love is that I've never heard, ooh, you're 2 inches too tall, or we really don't want blonde hair, we want brown. And with TV and film, that's a completely different way that they're trying to present their material. And so they have to find the person that can, look at the hunt that they went on for Superman before they landed on Henry Cavill. And you look at Henry Cavill and you're like, yep, looks like he walked straight out of the panel from the comic book, straight onto the screen. And what I love is the freedom that you can get from operating inside of a place where, like, we have really good animators, so don't worry about that. And while the technology is moving more and more towards, direct one-to-one, like, look at Until Dawn. It's fascinating. That looks exactly like Rami Malek. And I'm like, that's where everyone's going. But to be able to have the opportunity to take this and turn that into Joel, or this and turn that into Booker, or this and turn it into name the character, to me is really rewarding. But it also, the challenge becomes, what do you quintessentially know about this character that nobody else does?
Sure. Of all the characters that you've played, do you have a favorite? Is there someone that really resonated with you in particular? To
me, those are two separate questions. To call a favorite, every character that I've had the privilege to play, and it is a privilege. It's nothing has been earned or deserved. It's literally someone took a gamble every time and said, thick or thin, full or flesh, we're going to give you this character, run with it. Joel definitely is even with the resonating question, because Delson Rowe in Second Son was probably the closest character to me that I've ever played. Sure. But then you have Sam from Uncharted 4, and that relationship I understand so well, of having the younger brother that's actually now the older brother. And so to me, there's something about each character that I've been fortunate enough to play that becomes my favorite. I loved playing Sam Drake in Uncharted 4 because I was such a fan of Uncharted, and I remember very vividly saying, I know that I'll make it if one day I can be in an Uncharted game. Yeah. So to be in the last Uncharted game, and not to just be in the last Uncharted game, but to play the brother of Nathan Drake is just like, that's it. That's it for me.
You said that Delson Rowe was most like you. Is that the good Delson or is that the bad Delson?
And so it's interesting to me, and I love the... because I was a big fan of all the Infamous games. But what was interesting about Second Son was there really wasn't a narrative reason for him to be bad. It was more, and I learned a lot from. I love the guys at Sucker Punch, and those guys are passionate about making a really good game. Yeah. The one stumbling block, and I've talked to the guys about this. One stumbling block I think they got into is they got so encumbered with who they thought they were that they struggled to find the game that they wanted to make. And so there really was no narrative reason for there to be blue or red, evil or good. But because it's an Infamous game, you have to have that in there. So instead, you can either be the hero, which is who Delson to me really wants to be, or you get to be the dick and just destroy a thing willy-nilly.
Going back to Naughty Dog and just talking a little bit about the way that they do motion capture, we typically think of voice actors as kind of going into a booth,
right?
Recording lines over a scene that's already shot,
right?
But with mocap, it's totally different. Totally different. You're doing it as you're shooting the scene as it's being done. I mean,
it's more like TV and film.
Right. So, I mean, is that more of a challenge as a voice actor? Is that something that you relish? Do you prefer that kind of a setup?
I think it depends on who you talk to. For me, it's way more liberating because I've always somehow physicalized what I'm doing. And when you do that in a booth, especially in a small one, that can be detrimental to your health. But when you actually get on the stage and now there's a conversation, like you and I could have this exact conversation separately, but it wouldn't be the exact same as we're having it right now because I'm able to feel what you're talking about, anticipate where you're going, and even the way that we do, like when we did Tales from the Borderlands, is kind of a neat hybrid because like Laura Bailey would record separately from me. Every once in a while we got to record together, but for the most part we recorded separately. But what they understood was that it was important to have the conversation, so they would play her takes with me, and I would, just like I was having a conversation with Laura, we'd be able to record. So what I think is most important is not that it has to be performance capture, although that's my favorite. What's most important is that there's two people that are genuinely listening to each other. I think once you get that, then you really get the connection. And if the characters, the actors are connected, then you as the player is going to be connected to that as well.
Do you see motion capture becoming bigger? I mean, is that the way that the technology
It already has, yeah. I mean, it's like a fungus. What I don't like seeing is when you have a company that it doesn't fit their DNA, but they're like, I guess this is what we have to do to be a successful game. And it costs tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes $100,000 every day to shoot a scene. So if you're a smaller studio, it's going to break your budget. You can't do that. So I always want to challenge developers to just find the process that works for them. And if that includes performance capture, if that includes actors, then go that route. You don't have to.
Do you think including performance capture makes voice acting over video games more appealing for Hollywood actors? I mean, we saw Kiefer Sutherland coming in for David Hayter on Metal Gear Solid.
Kevin Spacey.
I mean, we've seen some big actors come in. Is that a trend that will continue if mocap is the thing that where it goes?
I think so. Every person, and again, you look at the cast of Until Dawn, and those are people that are historically, TV or film actors. And I think what happens is every actor that is primarily known for doing TV or film that comes in to do a game are sent out as ambassadors afterwards for either good or bad.
Sure.
You could have some people that are like, you know what, the suit was weird and the dots on the face, and I just don't know if I'll ever do that again. If that's their impression, then I feel that we have, as an industry, have failed them. Cool. So what I always want to do is make sure that if there's an actor who this is their first gig, like Merle Dandridge, this is the first performance capture gig she ever did was on The Last of Us. Right. And when she walked away, she was like, this brings me back to my roots. This is theater. This is exactly what I wanted to do. Kevin was the exact same way. When we were doing Call of Duty, you saw him kind of, and that's a guy who's super sharp, and there's nothing that really throws him off. He's like, wait a minute. And he finally said, this is like theater. Okay, this is like theater. And you saw this joy come out of him.
So many cameras.
Yeah, exactly. You, right? Well, but the beauty is that camera goes away, and even the camera that's literally right here disappears, and you have to get over the fact that instead of being in a wardrobe, you're in a spandex suit with shiny disco balls over it. So it's really about, you have to tune off what you are physically seeing, and you really have to focus on what's happening in the moment and who that character is.
Going back to one of last year's big highlights, Metal Gear Solid 5, and your portrayal of Ocelot, another iconic character. But he was totally different this time around from what many people expected. Different. He wasn't the sadistic antagonist, although he still had torture scenes.
A couple that were really, really good.
But he was more like Big Boss's friend. Was that a surprise to you when you read the script?
Yes.
And was that a challenge, kind of not being able to use much of the source material before?
Yes. So for me, it was avoid the temptation. And, you know, especially the Ocelot that we know is the gunslinger. He's the crazy guy. He's the bad guy. But if you look, to me, what I love about Ocelot is that he is the most complex. If you can keep up with the characters, Game of Thrones, nothing on Metal Gear.
Yeah.
Because it's like boss. Well, there's Big Boss. Well, there's also Solid Snake. Then there's Liquid Snake. And then hold on, because Solid Snake and Liquid Snake actually become. Yeah. So for me, what's great about that, and especially in Metal Gear 4, was kind of the culmination of all of that. So there's nothing really that you want to do. That's why I kept telling people, it's like, just wait till you play the game. It'll all make sense. And that first, I mean, I thought the opening scene to The Last of Us was long. My God, that prologue to Metal Gear Solid.
It's huge,
like,
and it's so different from the rest of the game as well.
Completely different. But to me, what was great was that it said, everything that you've known about this is gone. Sure. This is something completely different. So it was, while we were doing it, I would start slipping back into that, and Kojima would be like, it's different this time. I'm like, so it gave me more freedom to really be who I wanted Ocelot to be. Because Ocelot's been in every game, except for one.
So Mr. Kojima was actually there
for a lot of the sessions, yeah. Towards the end, obviously, not so much.
Sure.
But we had a lovely director, Chris Zimmerman, who's been with the franchise since the very beginning. And her ex-husband, Patrick Zimmerman, was the original Ocelot.
Right.
So it's either been Patrick, Josh Keaton, or me.
Sure.
And so that's a really good, like, if I'm going to hang in a club, that's a really good club of people to be a part of.
Right.
And for what it's worth, I thought that what Kiefer did was lights out. It was such a grueling task, and he rose to the challenge.
Nobody could replace David Hayter,
but that's the beauty, is it's if you look at it as a replacement, then yeah, I'd be like, no, David Hayter is. It's like, look at Charles Martinet. He's the voice of Mario. But it's not a replacement if it's not Mario, but it's now Antonio. You know, it's a different character, so let it be that.
Sure, I mean, obviously the future of the Metal Gear series is kind of up in the air at the moment.
Yeah.
With everything that's happened with Konami and Hideo Kojima. Do you see Ocelot as a role that you're going to play in the future? What do you feel about the future of the series?
You know, I would say this, as much of a Metal Gear fan as I am, there comes a time when you need to let the franchise stand on its own and let it be what it is. I'm more excited to see what Kojima can come up with on his own, and I mean, he's risking everything right now. He's going for broke. He is such an iconic, seminal writer, creator, director.
Right.
And I've met very few people in my life that are as influential, as passionate, and as humble as he is. Neil Druckmann is like, they're cut from the same cloth.
Cool.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see what Kojima comes up with.
Following the release of that game, there was obviously, it came to light that there was a bit of content that was cut. Was there anything that were there lines that you read? Was there footage that you saw, or was there a script that you saw that wasn't included in the final game? And
it was more about, games are a very iterative process, and the same thing could be said for pretty much every game that comes out. There was a huge set piece in Uncharted 4 that I was massively in love with, that had to get cut because it was either the game ship's broken, or and that scene is in there, or we put out a better game and that scene isn't there. No one will ever miss what they didn't know.
Cool.
With Metal Gear, I wish there had been more that had been cut, because I feel like there's times when Ocelot would tell you, remember, if you want to shoot the gun, pull the trigger. It kind of got to the point to where we were over tutorializing the player. And I think that players today, especially Metal Gear players, are really smart, are really savvy. I don't think there's ever anything wrong with me as a player going, I don't know what to do, because now I'm really invested in that game. So I think you can always cut.
Cool, man. You mentioned in the Q&A panel there that you and Nolan North are great buddies off set. What was it like actually shooting something with Nolan? I mean, I wasn't sure how much you'd worked with him in a mocap
Right.
capacity prior to.
We've done a
Uncharted 4.
few things, but nothing to the extent of that. Like, you know, he would day play on The Last of Us. He was in Shadow of Mordor for a day, and you know, we've done stuff in the booth a lot of times.
Yeah.
Typically, people are smart enough to go, never put Troy and Nolan in the same booth or the same stage at the same time.
Sure.
And this is the reason, and that's why Uncharted took 5 years to do, is because Nolan and I were just busy faffing about. But I'll say this, man. He the first scene that we do, and Sully came in, and it was you'll see it. It's the first time that Sully sees Sam again, and it was like to hear Richard go, "Hey, kid," and I'm like freaking out. It was like, "Sully, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "That's Nate." I'm like, "I'm doing this. This is actually happening."
Yeah.
So it was such a fanboy moment for me too. But then I also got to see, like, it was really cool watching those people because I'm new. I'm the new kid, right? And to see Emily and Richard and Nolan kind of go, this is it. We're gonna ride off into the sunset on this one. It was an honor to be a part of that process too.
Nice, man. And finally,
Yep.
we know that we've obviously mentioned that you're buddies before, but there's probably a little bit of competitiveness between the two of you. Who does the best Christopher Walken impression? I know that
hands
you're
down
both...
Nolan North.
Really?
Literally, Nolan North does Christopher Walken. So, like, if Walken is not available to do what's called looping or ADR, where they have to replace a line from a movie, they don't call Troy Baker or the slew of other actors that think they could do a Christopher Walken impression. They literally call Nolan North. And so, like, the last 5 movies, I think, if Walken wasn't available, Nolan came in and did him. And Nolan was the first person. A lot of people do the voice, but that's the thing that makes Nolan so good is Nolan is not just a voice. Like, he literally transforms and his face moves and you're looking at Walken, but just with this ginormous head and Nolan's face on it. So absolutely, that contest will always go to Nolan.
Well, Troy, thank you so much. It
My
was
pleasure,
a pleasure
man.
to talk to you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. That's all we've got time for today. Be sure to check out Uncharted 4 coming May 10th, starring Troy Baker, Sam Drake. For everything Gamers for the Win, you can find us at www.gamersforthewin.co.uk. You can find us on Twitter at FTW_gamers. Troy is at Troy Baker VA.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. And once again, I've been Alex Gibson. You can find me at Scribe Gibson. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Man, me too.
Cool,
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
cool
bro.
stuff, dude. It was
Thank
really
you.
good. Really good.